what I would tell me 20 years ago, the 20 years younger version of me, is that just develop very thick skin and not be afraid to articulate your thoughts. Have conviction. Don't do it too often. When you have that conviction about something, and it takes time to develop that conviction, be able to stand up for yourself and explain why you think something makes sense. And over time, the more you do it, you get better and better and better at it. And everyone, we're smart, just need the reps. And you gotta have a thick skin to not be afraid to speak out. Even if you get shut down, don't worry about it. It's how you carry yourself, how confident you are, how articulate you are, that even if you don't win the argument, people remember that, that person had guts.
Today's guest is Hans Tung, managing partner at Notable Capital and one of the most important investors in the world. In our conversation, Hans shares his journey from growing up in Taiwan and immigrating to California at the age of 13, to investment banking on Wall Street, to experiencing the tech boom in China, and ultimately shaping Silicon Valley as a global investor. We dive into what he looks for in founders, how he's navigated being an Asian American leader in venture capital, and why conviction, resilience, and community matter now more than ever. I'm really excited for today's conversation with Hans Tung, managing partner at Notable Capital and one of the most influential venture capitalists in the world. Hans has been consistently in the Forbes Midas List for best venture capital investors for 13 years straight, top 10 in 5 of those years. He's invested in top founders from around the world. Hans' portfolio has notable companies like Airbnb, Coinbase, Slack, Zendesk, Wish, Affirm, Peloton, Poshmark, Quinn, StockX, Ibotta, and in the US, and ByteDance and via the investment in Musical.ly, Xiaomi, Meituan, Xiaohongshu in China, and Flipkart and Snapdeal in India. I'm sure there's many more Hans I'm missing out on, but I'm just going to include some of those. I first met Hans years ago, but Hans has been a great supporter of the Asian American investor and founder community here in Silicon Valley and in New York. He's hosted parties for and get-togethers for Lunar New Year's and other events for our community, and it's been amazing to see. And he's looked up to by so many, including myself. So thanks for being with us today, Hans.
Thank you for having me, and you're extremely, extremely kind. I look up to you for all the work you do to tell the AAPS stories online and also in person. I think you make great contribution to the community. So thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Hans. So let's get started from the beginning. You're born in Taipei and you moved to Torrance at the age of 13. Is that right?
That's correct.
And do you, I'm assuming if you moved at 13, you remember a lot of Taiwan then, like growing up in Taiwan.
Yes, I remember a lot of Taiwan. I don't speak Taiwanese as well. My Taiwanese is really bad, but I speak Chinese growing up. Taiwan was fantastic. It was I was born in 1970, and so during that 70s era is when a lot of things happened. Taiwan kind of got kicked out of the United Nations, and then at the beginning of that, middle of that era, and then towards the end of that first 10 years of my life in Taiwan, President Carter switched recognition of China from Taiwan ROC to mainland China PRC. So there were some big changes in the 70s in Taiwan. Obviously, I didn't know about all the big changes in the US until I came here in 1983, but that was just a very interesting 10 years.
And so you grew up in, I'm assuming, public local schools. You were cleaning toilets and getting hit by teachers and things like that?
Not as bad. I was lucky to go to an independent school in Taipei from early on, from kindergarten and elementary school. We're not rich by any means, but definitely had a very decent middle class lifestyle, and had a benefit of loving parents and great friends, and just learn a lot. It's easy to be a good student in Taiwan. So I have very fond memories of my childhood in Taiwan.
And do you have any siblings?
I have a younger brother and 2 older half sisters.
Okay. And when you were there, your parents, what did your parents do?
My father was into real estate development. He's an entrepreneur almost throughout his entire life. And there was a period of time when I was young, he wasn't as active. He ran a candy brand in manufacturing, but then had to sell the business to send my 2 sisters to the US for college. One went to Cornell, another one went to MIT. And by the time he did that, Taiwan economy started to take off, and he had to spend a bit of time to use the remaining cash that he had to reinvest in real estate and start developing projects. So by the time he sent my younger brother and I to LA, that's when he started to become very active in real estate business again.
So when you moved to LA, was your dad still in Taiwan and you moved with your mom? Okay.
Very common at that period in time. As you know, many Taiwanese families have the fathers, they don't speak English. My father definitely did not, and so he had to stay in Taiwan to work. And then for the next, I came here when I was seventh grade. So until I went to Stanford, my father passed away in my first year at Stanford. So during the 6 years, basically, we're separated from our father. We only see him like once a year. My mother moved to LA with my brother and I, and kind of raised us throughout my middle school and high school.
So then you didn't really get to know your father well, because most of your formative years you were in LA with your mom, and then he passed away when you went to Stanford.
Well, thank God when I left Taiwan when I was 13 for my younger brother's harder when he was 10. So the first 13 years of my life, I know my father extremely well. And
Yeah.
he was a great father, provides, very loving. We had different interests. I was much more of a historian. He was much more a businessman. So back then, I cared a lot about history, about humanities. So we didn't have a lot of common language, but he loved me and provided for us. I'm appreciative of his work for us every single day.
So growing up in Torrance, PV area, I guess it's called the South. Is that called the South Bay? I always forget.
South Bay. Yeah, that's
South
right.
Bay, right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was in Torrance for 2 years and then Palos Verdes for 4.
Got it. So high school was all in Palos Verdes, right?
High school was all in PB. Yeah, middle school was in Torrance.
Got it. So Torrance, pretty Asian population. There's probably a lot of Taiwanese kids there. So you probably didn't feel that different. Is that right?
When we first got there, it was there weren't not as many. Over the next 2 years, there were more and more families moving in. But the first time when I got there, I definitely experienced racism. I got picked on, and I was a chubby kid from Taiwan who was very tall but not extremely athletic, did not play a lot of sports. I picked up basketball for like the first time when I was in 7th grade. I ended up playing basketball and cross country and volleyball, and did water polo briefly in high school. But as a first-gen immigrant, you don't play sport until you're much later. And sport's a lot of fun, but it's not as fun when you're like 5 years, 6 years behind someone else who has been doing that for much longer than you have.
Yeah. And so when you say you experience racism, because isn't Torrance like, that's where like Toyota and all the Japanese American
Honda,
right?
Toyota, Nissan. Back then it was Datsun, and name was changed later. We're all in Torrance. That's right.
So was your school mostly Japanese American kids, or?
No, we went to the public school in middle school and high school, and for Torrance Newton Middle School, I'm not sure it's still there anymore. They were mostly white kids, and a few African Americans, a few Hispanics, a few Asians, but not many.
Okay, so I mean, you weren't 6'3" yet, like you're 6'4", whatever you are now.
I was quite tall. I'm probably almost 6.
And still bullied?
When I was in middle school. Yeah. It didn't matter about the size, because the other kids are also big and tall and fast. And they were much better in athletics than I was. I was just in complete out of shape. By the time I got to by the time I got to Stanford for college, I was in much better shape. But throughout middle school, the first 2 years were tough. And then there were a few Japanese kids, but they were all like being in the U.S. for a long time. That's the first time I actually, before I came to U.S., before I went to Torrance, I had no concept of an Asian. Because in Asia, every country is different. It's like in Europe, people don't think of themselves European as much. They think about, French and Spanish and Italian and British and so forth. And same thing in Asia. The concept of Asia only became something that was new to me when I came here. And all a couple of Japanese kids who grew up here, one of them was born here, another one came in who was very young. They think themselves American. So they were like picking on me.
They were the bullies,
the same way other American kids were picking on me.
Got it. And did you have trouble learning the language, or you were learning it in Taiwan when you came?
I didn't know much about English when I first came, but I picked up very easily. And the math part obviously was just as a joke. It was so easy. You don't need English. It just you didn't do that well. English. It didn't take me that long. After a year, I was pretty much into it. I had tutoring after school, and I remember Mrs. Johnson was one of the kindest, most thoughtful Mormon teacher. And she had a suite of materials on reading and writing. She told my mom years later that I was the only student out of her 20 years of tutoring that finished everything she had for someone to learn. And I did that cover them all.
Yeah. And did you find yourself hanging out with mostly other kids who were immigrated, or other Taiwanese kids? Was that most of your close friends then?
For middle school, was all other immigrants. Because it's the easiest. For high school, once we moved to PB, it was mostly Asian American kids and some who are people that play basketball with.
Okay. So sports teams.
Caucasian and a few more Japanese Americans who are extremely Americanized.
So sports helped you actually integrate more with other kids.
Absolutely. And I remember growing up, watching a lot of Three's Company and Family's Ties, all those comedies, those shows help. And sports, definitely. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you ask me any question about, the top NBA teams or top NFL teams from the 80s onward, there's not much I
Yeah.
don't know. And
Yeah.
so it just, without that knowledge of pop culture,
Yeah.
music, and
Yeah.
TV shows and sports, it would have been extremely difficult. And
Yeah.
there were plenty of, as you know, Taiwanese American communities, Chinese communities,
Mm-hmm.
Chinatown, and so forth, where people just have, don't take in some of this stuff, and it
Yeah.
just makes it harder to integrate
Yeah.
into America.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like, family and other friends who grew up in like Irvine, where they don't have to speak about, like, learn anything about America. They could just speak
Right.
Mandarin and never get out of there.
Full time.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
everything. Monterey Park, Alhambra,
yeah,
those San Marino, those cities, and plenty of Chinese signs,
yeah.
and you're totally okay to speak Chinese the whole time,
But then
or
you can't,
Taiwanese.
you never learn to interact with anyone else. And so you
Correct.
stay very insular. So yeah, it's a very unique experience in that bubble. So after graduating from PV High, you go to Stanford
Yeah.
and you
If I went
study.
to Stanford, I went to Caltech for summer school, UCLA for summer school, so I
Oh my
know the
gosh.
whole
Yeah.
LA school scene
Yeah.
quite well. LA is a great environment to grow up as a kid. Plenty of space, you can run around.
Yeah.
It is not as cultured, which I got more of that when I was in New York after
Yeah.
Stanford.
Yeah.
Going to Stanford in '89, I think it was another big change moment in my life for me.
So what was it like going to Stanford then?
I
Was it
visited.
everything
I
you
got to
dreamed of, or everything that everyone
I got into Stanford and MIT.
Yeah.
And so I visit both schools. And I would say that I probably would be a better student at MIT than I would have been at Stanford because there's less distraction. But there was something about Stanford that beyond the weather, there's just something there. I didn't know anything about VC or entrepreneurship or tech innovation, but there was something about Stanford that was just interesting to me. Maybe because of the stories I hear of semiconductor startups growing up in Santa Clara and San Jose. Back then, it was a joke that MIT means made in Taiwan. There's so many double E electrical engineering majors who finish MIT, end up going back to Taiwan and work for TSMC, UMC, the semiconductor fabs. So people here in the US don't know about TSMC or semiconductor fabs until like the last few years. I know of them, well, before I went to Stanford from family friends who worked in the PC and IC industry in Taiwan and end up going to TSMC, visit their fab back in like 1995 for the first time. So coming through a more of a different background, you just get a lot more data points about what's happening around the world, and that has been invaluable to me for the rest of my career.
And so after Stanford, like a good Taiwanese son, you go to investment banking at Merrill Lynch. You move to New York for 2 years, and then you go to Hong Kong. I mean, New York, Hong Kong, coming from California boy.
I love New York. That years
But you
New
only
York,
spent 2 years there.
I know, but you have over 100 plus investment banking analysts all going through the same experience at the same time. And you get training in New Jersey, in the training center, and then you spend time in New York, Manhattan, and you work hard, 5 days straight. And on Friday night, you can go out and hang out until 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. On weekend, you still go to work, but you still have the afternoon and evening be able to go and do stuff. Then New York never sleeps. So it was those 2 years were probably some of the best 2 years of my life, and I will never forget that.
Wow. And you had to spend, was the Merrill Lynch, I used to deliver Chinese food to a Merrill Lynch office in Plainsboro. Was that where you did your training?
That's the training where the training center.
Yeah,
right.
I delivered Chinese food to that building.
Yeah, and I worked in the World Financial Center.
Yeah,
back then, and it's still there.
Yeah,
but obviously, World Trade Center next to it is no longer there.
Yeah,
and so it's I live in Battery Park.
Was that the Amex building? Was that the Amex?
I can see the Amex building from my apartment. Yeah.
Oh wow!
It's the first building I see. And Lehman is right next to it.
Yes. Did you live in like 60 Wall like everyone else, or like one of those like there's?
No, it was a
John Street
333 Rector Place. It was a nice high rise, not too tall, but a decent, very nice apartment building in Battery Park. I mean, Battery Park is
six people packed into. It was like
no.
4 people packed in one with fake walls. Oh, okay.
It's quite nice. No
place.
I have a decent view of the harbor.
That's great.
From my apartment, so no complaining. Just the friends I made at Merrill, which is I enjoyed them. I still stay in touch with the.
That's great. But then you love New York so much, and then you moved to Hong Kong.
Right. For 30 years, I thought it would be good to have a different experience. I was in M&A for 2 years and thought, let's try Corp Fin, let's try Hong Kong. And a lot of my older friends who end up spending 2 years in New York choose to go to Hong Kong. So I thought it would be fun just to see what Asia's like. And at this point, I've been away from Asia for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be it's good to see. And when I went back, I actually had a bigger cultural shock than I did when I moved to New York than I did when I went to Stanford for college. Everybody's spoke Cantonese. English was kind of broken. I mean, you can get by, but clearly they prefer you to speak Cantonese. And for someone who speak Mandarin and very broken Taiwanese, Cantonese is very much a foreign language to me. The people who are very good at picking up Chinese dialect, I'm not one of them. So the living in Hong Kong for me was not as fun as being in Stanford or New York.
So that lasted 1 year, and then did you move?
And then towards the end of second half of that 1 year, I spent a lot of time on semiconductor space. That's when I went to TSMC, Hsinchu Science Park, to UMC, to Winbond, and a lot of IC fab, and map out the sort of whole IC fab industry. This is capital intensive. They need investment bank to raise money from. So that was really fun, and that allowed me to see. Now I have a more global view of where stuff is being made in Asia and where does it go to for end users in the US. When I was in New York and I helped do 2 sell assignments, both of them did not go through, but I spent a lot of time helping the seller. One of them was building bathroom accessories, home furnishings out of Missouri. The other one was doing it out of fireplace furnaces out of Vermont. And both of them were selling. I asked them why, because they say they face stiff competition from Taiwan and South Korea. So even back then it would be 394, you see the sort of manufacturing moving out of US for cost reasons. And just, the manufacturing in Taiwan back then did not get as big as it is in China, but the big plant still had 50,000 people.
Everything was made in Taiwan then,
in factory. It's huge by American standards and just extremely efficient. Quality is increasingly extremely good. So it makes it very difficult to compete for American businesses. So I just see that firsthand, and then see stuff made from Taiwan and I'm selling to the US, and allow all the consumers in the US to buy it for much cheaply. That whole value chain wasn't obvious if you're sitting in New York playing with money or sitting in Silicon Valley playing with software. You just don't know that until you see it and feel it and touch it.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So is that why you joined the growth capital firm as an associate in Taipei and Singapore after Merrill?
I had 2 offers. One was to Warburg Pincus, and my boss would have been one of my 2 bosses now is the co-CEO of now chairman of Warburg Pincus. So it was amazing to see the rise of Asia playing a role in his own career. I would have really enjoyed working for him, but ended up going with Crimson, which was backed by a Taiwanese family. And I just want to see how business Asia is done from more of a family conglomerate perspective. And they were able to raise money from their conglomerate friends in Japan and Korea and Southeast Asia and Taiwan. So, and institutionalized LPs from US and Europe. So it was interesting to see the entire Taiwan semiconductor, PC manufacturing, electronics kind of supply chain work throughout experience.
But even though you're looking at all the semis, ICs, and you were in the fabs and you were in Taiwan and Singapore, you decided in 99 to start 2 internet companies. So you got bit by the bug back then, because that's what everyone did.
I think this is where the Stanford thing came through.
You saw Jerry Yang making money on Yahoo. You're like, I got to do this.
Exactly. Jerry was my hero. Now he's a friend. Back then it was like, oh my God. Jerry Yang was Jensen Huang of his era. And so it was like, wow, it's amazing. Taiwanese American, born in Taiwan, came here first an immigrant like me, and be able to make this big, and just it's possible. And so I still remember the day I was in Merrill in 1995 and watching Bloomberg Terminal, and I see this company called Netscape went public, and the valuation was over $1 billion very quickly with very little revenue and a lot of losses. It was just fascinating to see that. They keep on tracking internet, and some of my friends, my fraternity brother Simoniu at Stanford, were people behind me, and I'm going to Yahoo, not Google yet, but Yahoo and Expedia and Excite and so forth. Exactly. Some are some are around, some no longer. But it's just interesting to see that. So thank God, because of that Stanford network, it stayed connected to what was happening, and just eventually end up joining 2 startups in Asia, both with some kind of connection back to Silicon Valley.
Got it. But then after that, you end up moving. Eventually, you do end up going to MIT. So you moved to Boston.
I'm going to MIT for grad school and was there for 3 years in Boston. And then
So
for
was it
the
3 years
year,
because you did Kennedy School, or like what was the third year?
third year. Oh, actually, for transition year, I was at Harvard Extension School
So you did go to Harvard.
for
Okay, got it.
for 6 months,
Got it.
and then ended up going to MIT Sloan for a graduate school, and was there for 2 years, and then came to um, West Coast to join Bessemer
Bessemer.
and to
Did
do
you
VC.
did you now was that the plan when you went to business school? Like did you know you wanted to go to VC? That's why you went, or like what was the? Because
Yeah, I knew I
you
knew
already
what
done VC
I've done a different kind of VC. That was
growth. Yeah,
more
that's true.
where and
Yeah,
more growth in it,
yeah,
and then that in Taiwan people don't invest from ground
right,
zero. It's
right.
from ground up.
Doesn't
It's
happen. Yeah,
basically
yeah,
you have to see a product, you have to
yeah,
have customers,
yeah. You
you have to
bootstrap it
generate
up.
revenue,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you need growth capital, and
No
that's
such thing as
when Taiwanese
VC.
VC that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's not true VC.
yeah, 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 yeah.
It's more early growth.
Or
And
it's
then
family money that helps you make stuff.
exactly, and so
Yeah.
it's not as institutionalized.
Yes, yes.
And a lot of money come from other PC manufacturing houses or from PCB manufacturers, from
Yep.
like families like behind the Quanta, those the
Yeah.
assemblers. So it's a very different kind and more of ODM money.
Yeah.
And so that's the LPs inside the firm. So
Yeah.
it's very much invest something and then sell it to your LP who are ready to
Yeah.
take that and pump it through their own distribution channel.
Yeah.
And so working at Bessemer was an eye-opening because it was just so interesting to see how people did investment thesis. I never spent time working with them, but spent time with Jeremy Levine and David Cowan.
Mm-hmm.
I did work on a deal together, Baron Dieter. So I know a lot of Bessemer guys, and it ends up making Forbes Midas List and become famous in their own right
Yeah.
by working there.
Yeah.
That's when I realized that for U.S. market, consumer internet was starting to come of age.
Mm-hmm.
Web 2.0 was starting to start. Remember, like second year on the job, Web 2.0 become a term that people started to use.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, now it's 3.0 and beyond, but back then 2.0 was the era of social networking, and Chris Dixon was a year behind ahead of me. So it was just a very amazing class. Sarah Travel came later.
Yeah.
And then Brian, who started Lead Edge, came later as well.
Oh, wow.
So that class,
That cohort
2-3 years, had amazing associates and analysts that ends up being in the right place at the right time, smart folks, and end up doing interesting things. James Chan is now at Bloomberg Beta. So it's a great group of folks. I moved to China, moved to Shanghai at the end of 2005 with Bessemer. And initially the thesis was semiconductor, China has so much manufacturing, they import 85% of the chips. At some point, it will be import substitutions. Even as early as 2005, American VCs were looking at China for that kind of opportunity. And after 1 year, I realized that that's not going to happen because the American chips are better. You want to buy quality and high performance, and you have the margins to support it, you buy American chips. If not, you should buy Taiwanese chips from and those chips are much cheaper than MediaTek, much cheaper, not as powerful, but it's so cheap and they can mass produce so quickly that it's better to have better support from them than it is doing it from the Americans. It would take a longer period of time. So the Chinese chip was stuck in the middle, with neither have the scale and the low cost advantage, nor have the high quality performance ability of that. So we had to change thesis, and then that's when I started saying that okay, I'm going to reinvent myself from a sort of electronics guy for the first 10 years of my career to much more of a consumer internet investor instead.
And did Bessemer allow you to do that, or you had to go to Qiming? Did you have to leave to do
Great
that?
question. Bessemer was open to it. I think, if I look at the deals that made me famous later at Qiming, I don't think those deals would have gotten approved at Bessemer because the evaluation was too high, the team was not as mature, and the track record wasn't so obvious that you have to bet on them, and they were the one who can become successful. One of the study I did at Bessemer, I always remember this, is very useful. It was just looking at all the IPOs came out of China, came out of India, it's two big emerging markets, and compare how they traded versus the American counterparts, because many companies were copying what was happening in the US to do it in China, do it in India. And you can just tell that the Chinese company was trading at a premium to US, even though there's a lot more risk in
Yeah.
China. So
Well,
one
bigger
could
market
argue
too.
that,
Yeah.
hey, we came here 5 years too late. This stuff
Yeah.
had been discovered. Or you come here 5 years too early because the skill hasn't picked up yet. Once you have
Yeah.
skill, the multiples will normalize. So it was just was an interesting time. And by 2008, with the market correction in the financial crisis here in the U.S., ends up pulling back. Had it not leave, Western part would have shut down anyway because
Interesting.
of the domestic situations.
Yeah.
In '07, I had several offers because I was doing a good job on the
Yeah.
ground managing the companies for Bessemer. So of the offers I had, Qiming was the best fit.
And you were there from '05 to 13. I mean, that was, I remember friends who went probably '01 to China, but you saw a lot of like the change, the Baidus, the Alibabas, like everything that was happening. Like, what was that like as an Asian American living in China? Because I hear from friends who, I mean, a lot of them just really like partying, like they had a good time while they were there. But things were
They
moving
were
so
doing
fast.
that.
There were good times,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, things were moving pretty fast there. Like, was it not thing for you to stay because you had gotten to know the ecosystem there so well for 8 years? I
Right.
mean, some people stay and then, but you decided to come back. Like, what was it like to be there during that time?
It was very fast paced, felt anything was possible. And more importantly, US and China had an amazing relationship at the
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
America believed in engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, a lot of people on the other side of the aisle feel was the wrong strategy for
Mm-hmm.
America back then. Today, with hindsight being 2020, back then it was hoping that by engaging China, there will be a rise in middle class. Things were opening up,
Mm-hmm.
and for a while I did see that with internet being broadband penetration everywhere. There's a lot more openness
Mm-hmm.
versus what it is now. The last 10 years, first 8 years I was on the ground, you do see a lot of people being more vocal through Weibo, through
Yeah.
social media to talk about a lot of things that's going on in different cities and so forth. It exposed a lot of things that was a different environment back then. It was a lot more open on a relative basis. And the companies you invest, probably 2-3 companies that I invest that made a huge difference. Obviously, Xiaomi from day one, and then also I work with another colleague, JP, investing in Genping,
Mm-hmm.
which ended up merging with Meituan, and Meituan and Xiaomi each is like 180 to 220 billion dollar market cap company,
Mm-hmm.
and investing Xiaomi day one 20 million pre to what is now. It just what an incredible journey
Mm-hmm.
to see the companies grow. And so the founders are very open, very hardworking, very willing to learn, very willing to exchange ideas, and they all feel that they're doing something that makes the country better and give user more opportunities to make a
Mm-hmm.
difference in their own lives. I didn't invest in Alibaba, Tencent, or Baidu. By the time I came to China, those 3 companies were all well funded. But GGV in China, was an early investor in Alibaba, bought shares from Goldman Sachs, who was even earlier, but had to decide to leave China in 2003. And so you just see the incredible changes. So many Chinese who were living in poverty, their income grew as a result of being able to leverage internet to sell goods online. So a lot of young founders were starting businesses on Alibaba, selling goods to consumers in throughout all of China. Internet was a great equalizer. Otherwise, in China, you need guanxi to go anywhere.
Yeah.
If you're setting up an offline business, you need guanxi to go to every province, every city. With the internet, you have a chance to leapfrog and really and this is desktop, not even mobile, just be able to sell goods across the entire nation. So I thought internet was a great equalizer and also a great way to build a national business.
Yeah. And what is like some common misconceptions that Americans have of like the Chinese market? Like, I've never worked there. I visited only once before, but I'm like, oh, I can never work there because contracts are not honored and people you can't trust like legal system there, so you can get screwed anytime. I mean, what is the most common misconception about doing business in China that you think Americans have?
I think there have been a lot of books that write about that, and a lot of them I think the stories are extremely valid. So I don't think they're a misconception. That happens a lot more in the offline world, to be honest. In the online world, because of the influence of Silicon Valley or the vision of Silicon Valley, many of the Chinese founders have visited Silicon Valley, but never really lived in Silicon Valley. But they admire that openness that Silicon Valley stood for. And so the business they built, a lot of it is based on merit. The misconceptions that some of the great companies in the internet space in China must have grown big because of state subsidy and so forth. That's not what I saw. The Baidu, the Ali of Tencent, the Xiaomi, even the ByteDance of the world, a lot of them, they won because they just built better product than their competitors. Another misconception is that, U.S. companies couldn't get into China, so Chinese companies become really big. They never really feared U.S. entrance. They will worry a lot more about each other than entrance from the U.S.
Yeah.
Big example with eBay versus Alibaba. People don't talk about it. E-commerce is a completely no issue. There's the Chinese wall, so you have to be localized. You know, set up data server in China.
Yeah.
But if eBay had to make a big push after they bought EachNet to set up everything in China and really go at it from day one, they probably wouldn't be able to compete directly with Ali. What they didn't do was they keep on charging the 15% transaction fee, so that it limit the quantity of suppliers in China. People don't want to pay the 15% fee when you don't have to pay anything on Ali. And Ali made money from advertising instead. So they had Ali had a better business model on eBay, and they out executed eBay. You want to make a change on eBay, it takes 24, 48, 72 hours to change. Because the engineer is sitting back in Santa Clara, and in China, Alibaba, Hangzhou, sitting right next to you, and you have a problem. The merchant can get his AE to make a changes for him inside Ali's system. So the speed at which things work is what made the Chinese consumer companies amazing.
Got it. I mean, I think we were always fed by the media that the isolationism of China was like, if Google goes there, eBay goes there, they get shut out. And it wasn't that. I mean, the UX, the experience, the fees, if they force the model from the US there, it just doesn't work.
No, you have to adapt. China's just a different market. And today you see TikTok coming to the US and play by US rules and ends up doing things in short form video that other internet giants just couldn't do. So the just speed at which the Chinese company innovate. When I went there in 2005, everything was like copy to China from US. By the time I came back in 2013, even 2 years before that, WeChat was the best messaging app in the entire world. WeChat was just so much more sophisticated than Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp.
Like dark ages.
It's not even close. That's right. And Line from Japan was innovating. KakaoTalk from Korea was innovating. So in Asia, you had a lot more interesting consumer internet companies, not just from China, but also from Korea and in Japan that was ahead of their time.
Yeah. No, it's must have been amazing to see, and then come back here. So you come back here to the dark ages, 2013.
There's no still, and still don't happen today. I can take the train from East Bay to San Jose in one system, and so it just when I moved to Shanghai in 2005, there was only 2 subway lines in Shanghai, one in Beijing. And I remember going with Qiming to Tokyo in late September 2008, and just seeing the Tokyo subway map, so many of them, and roughly like 37 million people take the subway high-speed rail to go to Tokyo to work from outside of Tokyo. They live outside Tokyo, take the high-speed rail to go and work in Tokyo. When I look at that model, I didn't have any inside knowledge about what China's going to be, but you look at our model, I remember this is the future of China. Many more cities will have high-speed rail plus subway, and it's just going to build a much stronger national economy because goods and people can just flow much more efficiently than ever before.
Yeah, and we still have Caltrain and BART that doesn't work.
And continue to go up. And the longer it takes to complete something, the more costs escalate along the way.
Exactly.
Which is very, very difficult. And
that train to LA is train to LA is never going to happen.
I've been talking about it for a long time.
$30 billion. I
wish it could happen because it's such a difference. Riding the high-speed rail I remember from Shanghai to Hangzhou, it would take 3 hours by car. With high-speed rail, you're there less than 50 minutes.
50 or 15?
50.
Oh, 50. Yeah. I mean, even in Taiwan, the Gaotie in Taiwan is like amazing going down the Gaotie.
It's amazing.
So fast. Yeah.
And obviously for Taiwan, there's a lot of learning from Japan. Japan was the first to have that in 100%. Asia. And you ride those trains and it's unbelievable.
Game-changing.
Game-changing.
Yeah. For those people who don't believe that, that like eBay would not be able to adapt there, I worked at eBay and they were the slowest place I've ever worked, and they would not have innovated anything. Like getting anything approved.
eBay is better than the European companies. They were moving faster.
I'm sure the European companies could not survive.
Exactly. So, but the Chinese companies were moving even faster. So what I saw with the manufacturing that happened in the 80s and 90s, I started seeing it happening with the Chinese internet companies versus here in 2010s.
Yeah. And so you joined GGV as a partner in 2013 in the US.
Yeah.
And, honestly, I had always thought I guess I didn't, maybe I should have paid attention to history, but I thought you were one of the founding partners because GGV Notable is basically Hans Tung. I mean, I hate to say there's other partners, yes, but, and don't be modest. I know.
You know, consumer internet. That's what you see. But if you invest in infrastructure, you invest in
The other
development
stuff.
tools.
Yeah.
Glenn Solomon is amazing, and
Yeah,
our
Glenn's been
newest
there, yeah.
partner, GP Oren, is also amazing in cybersecurity, especially with respect to Israeli founders who are here. Jeff Richards has such an impressive Twitter X following. He's very smart. I think I like our makeup of team here. I definitely miss my ex-colleagues in Asia, Jishun, Jenny, and even Eric. So it is bittersweet, and then we had to separate in 2023, but it's the right thing to do given the current geopolitics. Just things to change. Now, I moved back in 2013 because I started to see that China was changing, early signs, but it was changing. So moving back here in 2013, probably one of the best decisions I ever made for myself and for my family. I want them to grow up in America. I want them to see the opportunities that this amazing country can provide. And I'm grateful and thankful that I was able to come here for middle school and high school and college. And so I wanted my family to grow up here.
So, I mean, I appreciate your acknowledgement of the rest of your partners at the firm, but like you've made the name much more obviously consumer
for the consumer audience.
For consumer audience. But, I don't think people realize the politics behind venture capital. I think it's a lot like succession at many firms. How did you navigate that as an Asian American? Let's be honest, there are very few Asian American, senior, general GPs at a lot of firms. Most of them, if you see, they probably don't have much carry. They've been there as an associate, they work their way up, but very few are where you are. I mean, I probably can count them on one hand, if not, maybe two hands. But
think more about East Asian or Southeast Asian.
East Asian, sorry, my apologies. Correction, Indian, East Asians, yes. The South Asians have done a very good job.
They've done extremely well.
Yes, and I've talked about that before about why I think that's the case. But for East Asians, you, Alfred, a few, maybe Jeremy Liu, there's a few others that I can name, or they had to start their own firms like Aileen and others, Teresa. But for those who have been at the storied firms, there's few of you guys. And so can you tell me more about how you navigated that being Asian American? Because, it is a very white boys network. To be honest, I mean, even women haven't broken through. Only Indian men have mostly made it through. How did you navigate that?
I think if there's no rise of internet in China, in Asia, I probably wouldn't be where I am, because this is hard to crack. And also, if you do amazing deals and end up being an amazing outcome, you can make it, but it's harder to have the chance to do that here.
No one gives you credit if you can't write the check.
Exactly, and a lot of companies that drive the returns in the U.S. still tend to be more enterprise. There was a period in time where, from 2010 to 2018, those 8 years, 2008 to 2018, that 10-year period where to be your consumer internet investor here, you can do well. But now it's going back with AI, back to enterprise again. So unless you are very technical, and you also have a great sense of product and know enough about go-to-market, it's just harder for someone who really can outperform someone else as a minority. A lot of times in VC, you got to believe when others don't believe. And if you are a minority, have a minority point of view on something that's controversial or not as obvious, very easy to get shut down by others. And I remember DST told me that it's not that they're the only one who saw Facebook as a company they shouldn't invest in 2008, but just in all the other VC firms, and the person advocating for Facebook cannot out-talk the other 3-4 guys who are skeptical. And that becomes much of an issue. You got to be more like them, think like them, to have a chance to be able to get the chance to make those bets. If you're counting on something different, it's just very difficult. And so, as a consumer internet investor in my heart, and have a great feel for it, there were not as many to invest in the U.S. besides that period between 2008 and 2018. And so you had to leverage somewhere else to do that. Fortunately, I was able to leverage China in the rise of Chinese internet companies to be able to do that. Now that once I have that credibility, once I have seen companies succeed, I now know more. So armed with more knowledge, I can speak confidently within GGV, now notable, about these kind of consumer deals.
And so you've invested in startups around the world, in China and India and the US and other markets. Like what have you seen as common themes for or threads and successful founders regardless of the market. Because I mean, you didn't live in India, but you made bets in India that seemed to work. Flipkart and others that. But what is a common kind of thread or DNA that you've seen in the founders that you pick? Is it the markets that you bet on, or is it the founders you bet on?
Great question. Well, because when I came back to the US in 2013, a lot of people think of me as a Chinese VC. Yeah, when I went to, you look at all the folks who were VC in China, number of non-mainland Chinese VC who actually made it in China. China's a big market. Oh, it's easy to invest in China because it's a big market. It's not a misconception. The number of non-mainland Chinese VC who made it in China, myself, Jixun, Jenny, 3 of us were with GGV, Herslin, Sina, and DCM. And then there should be a 5th person somewhere, but there's no more like 5 that actually made money that are not mainland Chinese, but made it work. Even as an ethnic Chinese, to make it work in China, it was super difficult.
Yeah.
And you look at China, the VCs who are good, there's the top 100, the Forbes track. There's so many VCs in China that people actually made money. It's still a subset of the number of people in the industry. Yeah. So it's just not an easy thing, period, no matter how big the market is. Yeah. Now, obviously, without a big market, it's even harder, for sure. Yeah. And so at least you had the benefit of that. And the commonality is that it's the founders you back. And VC is a power law business, as you know. You look at your portfolio. I look at my portfolio. I've done 150 investments roughly in my career. The one that really made money, that made difference in my life, each one of them made a huge difference. That number's less than 10, much closer to 5. And so that's just the way the VC business works.
Yeah. And so what is it about those founders that made you say yes, like in each of the situations, the 150 founder teams?
Whether it's Affirm, Airbnb, StockX, Peloton, TikTok here musically in the US, or it is Meituan or Xiaomi or Rednode in China. They were the founders that are great. They are just incredibly thoughtful and understand their users, their ICP extremely well. They understand the pain points, and they have enough experience dealing with them and coming up with solutions for them. They know which wedges to try to get in. And once they get in, they figure out how to build a platform around that initial wedge. So they are very comfortable with thinking in terms of phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And they have that incredible leadership quality to articulate that vision to get a lot of people who want to follow them to do something new. So those are just rare breed that can do all that in bundle. Most often you see founders who have co-founders that complement each other. They don't go as far, but they can still be successful in their own right. Just to generate that kind of big outcome, you need founders who have more of that skill set that I mentioned earlier.
Got it. No, that's super helpful. And so, during the pandemic, when people were scapegoating Asians for COVID and we saw a rise of anti-Asian hate crimes, you were one of the few Asian American investors who spoke up. I noticed it, and I think a lot of people in our community did. It's not in our culture.
So did you. I mean, your Wall Street Journal ad was incredible. Made a big difference.
Thank you. I mean, I think, we all can name, and we know the people who actually spoke up then. We remember Eric Kim and, the few people that did. But, a lot of folks that I thought would have said something didn't say anything. I mean, I don't name names, but I was just surprised and slightly disappointed. Yeah. But I understood it's not in our nature, in our culture to speak up. We keep our head down. And what made you become more vocal when others were being silent?
A lot of reasons. One, for Black Lives Matter. I mean, we don't know what it's like to be a Black American in this country, and we don't have enough representation of Black VC in our industry. But whether it's Me Too or Black Lives Matter, we spoke up. Supporting role. We're not them, so we can't speak for them, but we can be in support of them. And so when it comes for API as a firm, and I give a lot of credit to my partners who, and this is technically not their issue, but they were very supportive. They want me to say something, and I appreciate them for doing this with me. So I wasn't alone. So I appreciate Glenn and Jeff and Oren for doing that. And I still remember when I moved to this country in 1983, a year earlier, Vincent Chan was killed in Detroit for being thought of as a Japanese auto worker, even though he's Chinese. And those guys, the people who commit the crime, were let go and didn't have to pay much penalty.
$3,000, not a night in jail.
That's it. So, and so it just, that will always stay with me. And now that I've done a bit more and we're comfortable with speaking up, it was just the right thing to do. And so I appreciate the work you do. I appreciate the work that Eric has done. I appreciate a lot of the work that Eric Yuan at Zoom has done. When we raised that $5 million matching challenge online, many of the top 30, 40 VCs in US, in Silicon Valley, in LA, and New York rallied and did it. So I appreciate them. But Eric really went out and emailed a lot of VCs, CC me to get everyone to participate. So huge kudos to someone like Eric, who had been in this country for 20 years, and some people still view him as just Chinese, even though he has been an amazing patriotic American. It is just ongoing. If you don't do anything, democracy has a life of its own. If you don't fight for it, other people will fight it for you, and it will not be as good that way.
Yeah, no, it's great. Well said. Because it's funny, it's like when Eric did that, I had found out that a few venture firms did not donate anything, and I knew some of them had employed many Asian Americans, and so I was like, wow, half your firm is Asian American, but you don't want them to be safe walking, to their cars, to at the end of the day. But it was it was eye opening to see who actually cared and who stood up for the community back then, and still does that. It wasn't just a moment. That still it matters if you continue, because right now it's also when we need it most too, especially with all the anti-China stuff happening on.
And so as a student of history, people well remember.
Yeah,
you know about the Joe McCarthy era. So I understand U.S.-China has tension. There are a lot of things over in China I don't disagree, I don't agree with. So I get it, but that shouldn't spill over as it's okay to discriminate against all Chinese or all Asians. Here, we're not spies. We're Americans. So that is something that needs to be said and said often.
That's right. I mean, the witch hunt's going after professors and now, Intel CEO and other people like that, this and that. And like, well, I think it's just because of our skin color that we're automatically presumed guilty is crazy. So,
and now the AI, as you know, you see a lot more AAPI founders.
A lot more AAPI founders.
Whether East Asian, Southeast Asian, or Indian Asian American founders building great AI companies. And more founders from Asia are moving here, trying to become more American, and they don't have any business in China, and they want to build a global business from here. We need to welcome those people to be able to be successful here in Silicon Valley, to provide more jobs here and create more value from here to around the world. And it would be stupid to push them away.
And I mean, it's funny because I've seen the same as you. I've seen so many more of the founders now are Asian, because a lot of the AI solutions are very technical. And so this is
you don't need to wine and dine people. You need to take them to tennis games or sports games or NFL, NBA games. The product works, it has great benchmarks, you have a shot. And so equalize the playing field, made a lot possible for AAPI founders to build enterprise business now than ever before.
Yep, it's much more meritocratic than it was before. I mean, although I will say that one of the challenges, that access to capital is still, somewhat challenging for these folks, because they come from abroad. If they don't go to Stanford or Harvard, it's a struggle for them.
The more Americanized AAPI founders have had better opportunity
100%.
versus before. You see improvements on that. But for those who are not, they have to prove themselves before they can. So they have trouble raising money initially. We'll definitely see that as well.
And you've mentored, so many rising Asian American investors and founders. People look up to you. What do you wish you had known earlier in your career about navigating influence and visibility in Silicon Valley? Because you've been here now for quite some time, and you went to school here. What do you think that you would have liked to have someone told you earlier in your career?
Yeah, before I went to China in 2005, I wasn't sure if I have what it takes to be a successful VC. Period. So what I would tell me 20 years ago, the years younger version of me, is that just develop very thick skin and not be afraid to articulate your thoughts. Have conviction. Don't do it too often. When you have that conviction about something, and it takes time to develop that conviction, be able to stand up for yourself and explain why you think something makes sense. And over time, the more you do it, you get better and better and better at it. And everyone, we're smart, just need the reps. And you got to have a thick skin to not be afraid to speak out. Even if you get shut down, don't worry about it. It's how you carry yourself, how confident you are, how articulate you are, that even if you don't win the argument, people remember that, that person had guts. I see more and more, not just Asian men doing it, but also increasingly Asian women doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and which is amazing to see. In the number of women VCs and women founders have come of age versus before. Its number's still low, but it's doing better. Working with our race for
Mm-hmm.
since pre-COVID, and I have worked with I think 5 or 6 classes of
That's awesome.
mentees now, and you see more and more women and more color women doing this, and which is,
Yeah.
a very good thing, very important thing.
Yeah. I mean, for those who don't know, All Raise is organization to help more women investors, emerging managers, VC partners, and it's a great community.
Yeah,
So
thanks to
yeah,
Eileen, we're starting that.
yeah, that's right. So I mean, what would you say to Asian founders who are considering like, or people who Asian corporate America who are thinking, hey, maybe I should start something. I mean, is this a good time, or is it like, hey, maybe you should stick with your job because right now it's tough. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there and a lot of money sloshing around, and most of it is money chasing money. It's like just getting into the open AI, and they're not really going early to some of these companies. All the money's going to the ones that the giant foundational companies. There may be a few like Decagons and others that are getting money, but it's tough out there. Would you recommend? Because there are a lot of kids coming out of school now. It's like almost a
Yeah,
cool thing to start a company now, and a lot
yeah,
of people working at big companies are sitting
yeah.
there going, "Am I going to miss out on the internet boom of our generation?"
I will encourage those who are recently finishing up school or coming out of school to work in a larger company first, gain some experience, develop some knowledge and connections, so you can start your first company together. It's very difficult to have your first company do well, and so you want to play the odds, work for a few years, develop a network and people you may want to sell to, people you want to co-found a company with, then do it. Your chance of success will be higher, and you will be more likely to succeed in your second startup. Usually, it's not our
Hmm.
first. So you're
Yeah.
going with that mindset, and I'm here just to learn, get better at, so that one day I can build a much bigger outcome on my own. That should be the mindset that you have. And in this world, whether it's true here, also true in Asia, is that it's not about making friends or 关系. It's about I think being a good person, always doing the right thing, and
Hmm.
find ways to unify or build alliances and help each other to be better. If you
Hmm.
have that kind of heart, you want to do good things. People notice that this is a person, a good leader. He's always
Yeah.
trying to find ways to grow the pie, and people want to work with each other who are like
Hmm.
that, rather than always worry about someone stepping in the back.
Hmm.
So I know there are a lot of people with sharp elbows, and there's a way get ahead that way. I just think that if you're long-term greedy, not short-term greedy, and you'll end up have higher chance of success over the course of a career doing that way.
And do you feel like those folks who are kind of older considering starting companies that it's like, well, it's harder to make a bet on kind of older founders? Do you have a thought on or thesis on older founders?
I think if you're in the corporate world for 20 years, it's very difficult to change the way you think and operate. You're
Yeah.
not going to operate as quickly, and the skill set of management that you have is less relevant for a brand new startup. So
Yeah.
I think you've been in the corporate for 20 years, you're better off not try it, because it's just way too much work and too many things you have to change. But if you're young, gain some experience, and I think working in the corporate world for a few years, say 5 years, is good.
Yeah.
Working a startup in someone else's startup, learn from their mistakes, and
Yeah.
that's a better way to learn. And working someone else's startup for 10 years is a good way to be fully ready. So by the time, I think the best age, there's no a definite number per se, because you can succeed in any age. But you start your company between age 35 to between early 30s to early 40s, you have the best chance of success, because you
Mm.
have had a few reps already. You're more likely to succeed in the second startup. That's usually like mid 30s and late 30s.
Are you saying that you don't invest in first time startups? You only invest in the people's second startups?
We have two founders that are like not barely 20 or in the early 20s that I invested.
Yeah.
First startup did not go well, but the second startup he seemed to be fine. When I invested in the second startup,
Yeah.
but he seems to be great. The second one is Steven at the Dub,
Oh,
a
yeah.
copy trading app. He seemed to be doing extremely
Doing
well,
well.
and
Yeah.
it was 23 years old when we invested in him at the end of last year, or beginning of this year.
Very cool. And you have, remind me again, you have two boys or you have how many kids?
We two kids. Yeah.
Both boys? No.
Yes.
Okay. How are you raising them? Like, how are you raising them differently than you were raised in terms of like, you being a dad, they're being born here and very Americanized in the peninsula of all places, very different. Like, how are you getting them ready for the world?
It is not not easy. You try to get them to be more confident in themselves and have success on their own. I'm very much aware, like some of my own parents and other kids' parents are can be tiger parents, and we hover over the kids too much. I try not to do that, but sometimes I can't even help it myself. So I have to constantly catch myself not doing that. So it is, but looking at my own experience, my wife's experience, to be able to learn, navigate, develop that sense of self and become self-reliant. I just think that going to camps, take away trips without your parents, all those things, even I will consider for my second, for high school, all that things make a difference in terms of them developing more, how to be more self-reliant and then figure out for themselves who they are or what they want to do in life.
No, that's great advice. I think the independence now, like now we can't even let our kids go down the street without like worrying about them. And it's like, oh, when we were kids, we just ride around our bikes going wherever we wanted to. Now you can't even send them to the store by themselves because like a mile away, because you get arrested, you get in trouble for that or something. That independence is very important. Well, thank you so much, Hans, for taking the time. You've been one of the most generous and kind people I know, and it's a gentle giant, if you will. But thank you for using your power and
You're
influence.
very gentle and good-hearted as well. So I didn't go to East Coast for college. I only worked in New York briefly. I understand that there's a different ethos growing up different places, for sure. And there are places with people who have sharper elbows. But I do believe that if you're good and consistently be good, you can get others who want to work with you more. And whether it was going to China as a non-mainlander or coming back here as first-gen immigrant, I just know that in every board meeting, if I try to do the right thing, encourage everybody to support the right cause in the right direction, in the longer run, it's just easier to get people to work together and you're more likely to have a bigger outcome. You can get ahead earlier, faster on your own, but you can never go as far, in my mind, or not as likely to go far. And that philosophy has served me well. And I will encourage everyone to think that way who listen to your podcast, to be more like you, to do good, because the amount of goodwill you generate, you can do this alone. You have more people willing to help you, and you find common cause that unifies a team, a group of people. You can inevitably grow the pie bigger. And there's just no other philosophy in my mind that has worked consistently across different geographies, cultures, and time, as well as that.
Yeah, and you've seen all of it. Abundance mindset, whether it be in China, or India, or the U.S. or any market you've been in, that abundance mindset is defines a lot of success. And so, Hans, thank you so much for your time and using your power and influence to speak up and support our community.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you for all that you do as well.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Hyphen Nation. Please subscribe to my Substack at www.davelou.com and follow us on Instagram at The Hyphen Nation and LinkedIn at Hyphen Nation.